sure there's room for everyone around you. We're about to close the doors. This is the Marriott Marquis Experimental Chamber. We're about to open another portal. Oh. Welcome. And in case there is any confusion about my reappearance, I killed that Demogorgon. And I have the scars to prove it. So welcome, San Diego Comic-Con 2022 to Stranger Things, the Dungeons and Dragons of Life. Have an amazing array of colleagues here to talk to you about why they love this show so much through their expertise. I think we'll start with introductions at the end. Please tell everybody who you are, and then just briefly, what's the strangest things about Stranger Things? And we're going to start with Leandra.
Every time. I'm at the end for a reason. So I'm Dr. Leandra Parris. I'm an associate professor and coordinator of school psychology at William & Mary. I specialize in peer aggression and trauma-informed care. And the strangest things about Stranger Things would probably be the fact that I don't think it's strange, but like, where are the adults? Like, I know it's the 80s, so like they don't, porch light, all that, but at the same time, like, Nancy Wheeler's mom knows what's going on.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Like Dusty's mom, she's like, whatever. So that's the strangest things about Stranger Things.
Excellent.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Vanessa Hintz. I'm a clinical psychologist, Black geek psychologist, also social justice warrior. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. To me, the strangest thing about Stranger Things is that they go on all these adventures, and I swear they never eat. Like, they go days without eating. I don't understand. They don't sleep, they don't eat, and so I don't know where their energy comes from.
Just so you nerds are aware, I'm supposed to be spending the night at Tina's, and Tina always covers for me. But if I'm not at Uncle Jack's party tomorrow, and my mom finds out you three were responsible, she's gonna hunt you down one by one and slit your throat. I am Kelsey, aka Sistah K. Williams from the Sistah Speak Productions series of podcasts where we talk about TV and movies from a sister's point of view. And the strangest thing about Stranger Things for me is that no one in the town, except for this group of people, knows anything is going on. Nothing looks weird, nothing is funny. I'm like, they're all just going about their lives. There's all these murders happening, no one's investigating. That's to me weird.
Very strange.
Hi, I'm Justine Mastin. I'm a psychotherapist, an author, and so much more. I am best known for writing this book, Starship Therapise, using therapeutic fan fiction to rewrite your life. Available wherever books are sold. I think the strangest thing about Stranger Things is that it's morning, and that's so hard. Is that the kids aren't more traumatized? I guess they're still in the trauma, so they're just like going with instinct, but they're going to need so much therapy, and it wasn't good in the early 90s. So that might be a fun plot point for later.
There you go.
Thank you.
Has anybody seen Brittani? Oh, there she is.
I was wondering how you were going to do the stairs.
She was too.
Yeah, all right. Anything for the game.
Okay. So I'm Brittani Oliver Sillas Navarro. I am a marriage and family therapist associate. I am currently a doctoral candidate specializing in grief and loss or death and dying. And I think the strangest thing, as a fellow resident of Indiana, my hometown, it has to be in this geographical location. When we think about bad things, we think about New York, and we think about California. Right. And yet here's this podunk little town that experiences all these horrific things. And why in Indiana?
Why Indiana?
Why?
Hi, my name is Travis Adams. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and a social worker with the VA. I specialize in working with veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think the strangest thing is that they created a show with every single one of my interests from the 80s.
We're glad you're here. So, the title of the panel is Stranger Things, the Dungeons and Dragons of Life. So, to pay tribute to the game, we're going to do a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons while we're doing this panel. So, I have 3 six-sided die. Don't want anybody to rush up until I'm finished. What I'm going to ask is for 3 volunteers, and here are the conditions. You get 1, and you have to be able to see the other 2 people. And every 5 minutes or so, you roll these. And if your total equals 16, 17, or 18, some member of the audience gets to interrupt us immediately with a question. All right? That's 16, 17, or 18. If you get a 14 or a 15, you get to interrupt us with a question, but we get to finish saying what we're saying because we love to talk, and we are the Dungeon Master. So, do I have 3 people that can see each other and want to do this?
Oh, this hand went up right away.
Which hand where? Come on up. Now you got to be able to see the other 2. Let's go.
It
All right.
There's another one on
Can
that
we get
side.
a round of applause for our volunteer?
We got another one on that side.
Oh, we got another one over there? Okay, come on up. And then we'll go. All right. Asa, you pick who goes next. Because then I'm
Over here?
Reader, yeah. Go ahead.
There you go. Round of applause for our second and our third. Okay.
Thank you.
So you guys can't see each other really. So you're going to have to roll about every 5 minutes and then call out the number that you got. And then you got to do math in your head fast. Okay. Everybody, so 16, 17, or 18, you let us just call it out. And then we have to stop. And I'll just take someone from the audience quick with a short question, not an explanation of the series. Everybody with me? Okay. So here's what I asked the panelists to do. Dungeons and Dragons is all about choice and chance. Right? All about choice and chance. And every time you roll the die, you're inducing chance, just like chances in our lives, right? So I asked each of the panelists to pick a slide or pick a topic, character, scene from the show that lets them express their expertise through this idea of the intersection of choices and chances. Okay, so the first person we're going to start with is Travis.
So in my picture, it's from season 2, the beginning, when Nancy and Steve are having dinner with Barb's family. All right? And her mom and dad don't know exactly what happened to her, and Nancy does. So you see a lot of guilt from Nancy because she wants to share. But really what it comes down to is the ambiguous loss or uncertainty of loss that her family is dealing with. It's very much a unknown for her, right? And then there's the guilt on the other side. But you see things in Barb's mom when she's like, I know the dinner was tonight, but then I just kind of blanked out and I had to go eat KFC. Because she's so just lost, so uncertain with what's going on in her life in that moment and her dad. So much so that they put their house up for a mortgage to be able to find a private investigator to get answers. Right? The closest thing many of us can probably experience to this is getting ghosted if you're online dating. Just all of a sudden vanished, right? Just gone. And there's just so much uncertainty, like what I do, what happened, are they okay? And I think that this scene does such a lovely job of kind of showing that uncertainty, that unknown, and how it can impact us. There's a couple different types of ambiguous loss. One is like, I still care for the person and they're gone. Or if the person comes back and they're not the same, which is the other piece. So a lot of us who experience trauma, which is kind of my focus with PTSD and combat veterans, is that when they deploy, we don't come, I deployed twice to Iraq. We don't come back normal, right, to our baseline selves. But at 20 years old, I'm going to be different at 23 anyway. Just where is that difference? So my personality had changed. My symptoms kind of dictated what I could and could not do. And that's the other type of ambiguous loss. It's like just my personality is gone, even though I'm physically here. So those are the kind of things that I really love with this scene, because Nancy knows what happened. Her parents are uncertain. There's guilt, there's shame, and there's the unknown.
Thank you for that, Travis. So the way we're going to do this is each panelist is going to describe their panel, their image for about 3 minutes or so. We'll have a little bit of spontaneous panel because we want to get through all of this and we want to hear your questions so you can show us your love for the show. So I'll just quickly say what I love about this scene is the value of roles. In other words, when people are traumatized, collapsing into a role is a safe space. And not only do the parents collapse into it, collapse is not an insult, by the way, it just means that's what they're in right now. They go into a role, and then Steve and Nancy take on roles. And they know that those roles are what those people need. So I love that. Anyone else? Quick response.
Yeah, I was going to bounce off that and say that this last season, for the people who's watched it, all right. So earlier in the seasons, most of the loss or most of the ambiguous loss has to do with one certain family or one certain set of people, whereas at the end of this season, you see a community of loss. And so this is the first time that we see that people have a lot of missing persons instead of one or two. And so shifting the dynamic and having conversations about grief and loss as a community as a whole, I think is like reflective of our COVID experience, reflective of anyone who experiences a natural disaster or something else. And so it's nice to focus on something a little bit more broad than something that's just plot centered towards a certain amount of people.
Excellent. And go on.
I had a really
One quick question, comment, and then we'll move.
quick comment on that. I love the scene, but then also in this season, at the very end, when Dustin talks to Eddie's uncle.
Oh.
Yeah, that broke my heart because he gets a little bit of closure with knowing what happened to, well, not really knowing, but knowing what happened with Eddie, where Barb's family doesn't. And it's a different experience there for them to be able to move on, where Barb's, parents aren't going to ever be able to move on because they don't know what happened. They don't have her body. They don't,
All righty then. So on that note, we're going to go to Brittani.
Yeah, I'll make it short and sweet. Mine is really just talking about 11, the whole 11 of it all. The chance that this person is in this place at this time is so perfect. It is so interesting and unique, and of course it has to be thrown into it because it's the plot of the show. But what if Elle were in Colorado? What if we had to get her from Florida? Like it's really interesting that this chance meeting, this chance encounter really was pivotal in all of these new people experiencing life a different way, experiencing their identity a different way, evolving as heroic figures, as evolving as people that are competent and capable of taking care of themselves. And kind of piggybacking off of this statement earlier, where are the parents? Here are these children who are growing up so quickly because they're dealing with things that are so much bigger and vaster than anything else. And so the chance of Elle, our 11th, being there is massive because she is the fundamental point in which nothing else can ever be the same.
And the writing was so good, it just felt spontaneous. It just really felt spontaneous. Comments on that down here?
I would just say that I think that's indicative. One of my most favorite mantras is from The Killing Joke. All it takes is one bad day. And I think that this is an example of how one moment can change the entire trajectory of your life. And I think in the field of mental health, in the space of mental health, we often talk about that as being something traumatic. I think in this instance, it's a both and. Yes, these children have gone through tremendous trauma and tremendous triumph. And so that is all based on this one moment. And so I think we never know what that moment might be in our lives.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because when I teach trauma and I'm defining it, one of the definitions is that it has the opportunity for a radically negative or positive outcome. So in the definition, it's not meant to be an end-all be-all, like, yes, this is going to be stress. It can always be growth.
Exactly. And that speaks to the chance part. I mean, it was a chance, according to their lives, that they met Elle, right? And that shaped all their choices forever, right? I mean, it was amazing. We're going to move on now to Vanessa.
Oh, okay.
Can you see that?
I can't, but that's okay. I remember. So what I want to talk about is Blackness in Stranger Things. You want to talk about chance? We got a black family living in small town Indiana. You want to talk about chance, okay? Brittani know what I'm talking about. I was born in Indiana. But one thing that I appreciate, so one of the things that I picked was one of the first time we see the Sinclair family together, and there was something that was so beautiful to me about seeing a two-parent Black household, because we don't often see, Black people, we don't often see ourselves portrayed in that way. So that was just touching to me. It was also touching to see many things in their home that my dad had in our home, just like Black artifacts from the 80s. And so I appreciate that. And I take some issue with the way Blackness is portrayed in Stranger Things, particularly with Erica and Lucas. So Lucas, what is interesting to me is that we rarely see him interacting with other Black people besides his family. And I think that, thinking about Indiana in the 80s and what the culture was like there, and his family being one of the few families of color that we see, it's very curious to me that he doesn't have we don't see him interact with any other people of color. I don't want to talk about how he was on the basketball team this season. I was like, okay.
Still no
he had a whole high top. I loved his high top, but I was like, okay, they put Lucas on the basketball team. And so that what I'll say about Erica is this. I think everyone loves Erica. I love Erica because she's so sassy. What hurts me is that Erica grows up to be a Black woman in the workplace, a Black woman in the world that is not protected. And so we can sit and watch young Erica and laugh at all of her snazzy comebacks. Erica grows up. Erica becomes me in the workplace, and I am not treated with the same respect and admiration that she is. Why is that? And why is it that we can look at this Erica and we love her and we laugh, but we don't respect grown Black women in the same way? Where does that change happen? Where does that shift happen? And so the way that Erica is portrayed, to me also, I have a love-hate relationship, because again, I love it because again, there's an authenticity about it, and I have a little side eye because I'm like, who wrote this character in this way? If a white man wrote this Black girl in this way, I have issue with that. You know what I'm saying? And so again, I think that representation and the way that Blackness is portrayed in Stranger Things, I think it's a both and. It's a both and. I love it and I hate it at the same time.
To echo on that, like I talked about this yesterday a little bit, but for anyone who was there earlier, but this idea of who are the two characters who get physically assaulted by a person? The only two people of color, Lucas and Erica, and there's a gun pulled out on him. How does this conversation exist in the zeitgeist of, well, could it have been someone else? Is it racially, motivated? Who knows? But we have to have a conversation about, like, is this appropriate? Period. Is this appropriate for these two characters? If it was someone else, sure, we can have that dialogue, but it wasn't. It was Lucas and Erica. Erica, a little girl who gets dragged down and tackled by an older, young man, and then we have Lucas who gets a straight up gun pulled on him.
Well, and very well said. And now you.
Oh, yes. So this scene, this is a combination of things for me, but it's the relationship that Steve has with all of the kids. And
15.
What? Oh, 15. All right, that means that she gets to finish saying what she's saying, and then someone gets to ask a question, okay? So when she's finished and I ask, put your hand up quick, I'm gonna pick you quick, talk quick, not an explanation, a question.
I'll be quick.
You take your time.
Well, so what I love about this choice and chance and the thought behind it is that by chance, Steve and Dustin met in season 1, 2, I'm brain. And they met because they would have never met in school. They were in different grades. They had different friends. And by chance, Steve went to the house. Dustin went to the house to find his friend. Steve went to see Nancy. They met. They had this caper, and now they're friends. And Steve is so unapologetic about the fact that he loves these children that he has become friends with. He's not embarrassed by it. And then you add in Erica. Oh my God, I'm losing their names. Robin, thank you. And Robin, and that they're now also involved, and Erica, who has such disdain for everything, and they brought her in because she's smart and she's small and she can fit through the whole. I just love that chance, that one chance they've met at the house, and now they've had these relationships with each other, which is what I feel like has happened in my life. By chance, we started this podcast by chance because we wanted to talk about exactly what you just mentioned, how people of color are portrayed, and especially women of color are portrayed in TV. And we wanted to talk about that because no one was talking about, we've been podcasting for 15 years and we're still talking about the same doggone thing. Nothing has changed from 15 years ago. They're still casting the lone black person on Survivor who can't swim. Why is that? There are black people who can swim, there are white people who can't swim. So why are we always casting this stereotype? Why are we always having a sassy black friend? We need to talk about that, which is why we started the podcast. But my point behind that is, if we hadn't have decided to speak about this and maybe educate people who didn't think about this because they never had to, we wouldn't have the community, Sistah Speak, that we have today that I love. I feel like they're all family. We talk about so many topics, and I've learned so much from them. They've learned so much from us. And my life would not be the same. I would not be sitting here today, and I would not have the richness that I have in my life without that chance meeting, that chance talking.
And I would not be Sir Zombie Scotty. I would not be Sir Zombie Scotty. Quick question, hand up. Anyone? Right here.
Even I leaned back, I was like, I know.
Ooh, that reminds me of season 3 where Erica went on a whole rant about economics or something, or free markets, whatever she was talking about. And okay, so what I'm going to say to that, just short and sweet. There's a quote by James Baldwin where he talks about how I love America, so I have the right to criticize her. And I think as people of color and other marginalized folks in this country who have been oppressed by systems and structures in America, I think there's this idea that, because we protest or because we want, equal rights, that we somehow hate America. No, we're just calling America up. And so I actually like that they gave her that flag, you know what I'm saying? Because Erica has every right to be a patriot, as Travis or anybody else, you know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't have wore that flag, but you know what I'm saying? I'm happy that they gave it to her, and I'm happy that in all the sassiness that we see of her, she always comes correct. She always comes correct. When she read Eddie before that Dungeons and Dragons game, that was by far peak experience.
And that's the beauty how choice and chance works. If that role hadn't happened, you wouldn't have asked that question, and you wouldn't have that beautiful response. That's fantastic. All right, then. Next, it's Leandra.
Okay, so I chose this image. One, it's beautiful. I love the lighting. Who doesn't love snot dripping off someone's nose? So I chose this scene because, in case you can't place it, it is where Billy is about to really go after. He's got 11 pinned down. He could basically kill her right then. And she reaches up and touches his cheek and says 7 feet. The wave was 7 feet tall. And so what I loved about that was, I'm going to start by saying Billy is not redeemable. This is not a justifiable thing. He is a racist, he's sexist, he's violent. I'm not here to justify that. What I'm here to say is that he doesn't feel he has a choice oftentimes with his circumstances in terms of being a victim of abuse, with his father being abandoned by the one person who was his safety support. He has navigated the world as someone who doesn't feel like they have choice, who feels like they can't control what's going on around them, and they're exerting that aggression as a way of doing that. And what I love about this moment is that 11 had a lot of things that she could have done, and she chose to remind him of a time when he did have a choice, before he felt like the world imploded around him and he no longer had control over what was going on. And he chose to use that moment to take back control and to actually do something good with that. And again, does not redeem Billy, does not excuse the way that he treats the kids or what he ultimately does, but off chance he happens to be by this house, he gets grabbed, he gets taken over, and he has this one moment, this one roll of the dice, and he takes it, and he saves 11, he saves them all, and that's his story. And he finally got to go out taking a choice for himself that was based on himself, not his father, not his mother, not other people. And I really, really felt like they did a beautiful job with that. And it really sets up the arc for season 4, I think, in a beautiful way. So.
Comments down here on what Leandra said.
Yeah, I just think that, we are victims of circumstance at time, and again, not redeemable, but it helps us understand that there's some empathy for that character. right? You can hate that character the whole time. You see that scene, and there's that ounce of empathy you have because you can relate to them in that moment. And when you give empathy to somebody, you empower them. That's what a lot of us do as work. You know, we give empathy, we sit there and let people be open, and then they can heal. You get a little brief snapshot of that, and it just completely changes the way you see characters, and it ties people into their values, which when you're struggling with mental illness or complex PTSD, you sometimes lose focus, and you get into that fight, flight, freeze response, where your body just takes over, and you have to reset, you have to go back, and you have to get back to those things that really make you who you are, and that's that core value.
And I forgot to add, like, going along with what you were saying, Billy is the perfect example of why an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of intervention. Like, it took the mind flayer in 11 to, like, bring him back. Like, if someone had just not left him, you know, or, like, if someone had been a parent to him, that prevention aspect, I mean, that's why I do what I do. So, again, every time I see this, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of intervention.
Fantastic. So we're going to move on to my chosen scene. However, instead of telling you about it, my colleague, friend Justine and I are going to show you this scene.
Listen to me, Steve. It's shocked me to my core, but I like you. I really like you. But I'm not like your other friends. And I am not like Nancy Wheeler. Hey.
But Robin, that's exactly why I like you.
Do you remember what I said about Mrs. Click's class? About me being jealous and, like, obsessed?
Yeah.
It isn't because I had a crush on you. It's because she wouldn't stop staring at you.
Mrs. Click?
Tammy Thompson. I wanted her to look at me, but she couldn't pull her eyes away from you and your stupid hair. And I didn't understand because you would get bagel crumbs all over the floor, and you asked dumb questions, and you were a douchebag. And you didn't even like her, and I would go home and just scream into my pillow.
But Tammy Thompson's a girl.
Steve?
Yeah? Oh. Holy shit.
Yeah. Holy shit. Mm-hmm. Steve? Did you OD over there?
No, I'm just thinking.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, Tammy Thompson, she's cute and all, but I mean, like, she's a total dud.
She is not.
She is. She wants to be like a singer. She wants to move to like Nashville and shit.
She has dreams.
She can't even hold a tune. And she's practically tone deaf. Have you ever heard her sing all the time? And I need you more tonight. And I need you more tonight.
She does not sound like that.
She does sound like that.
No, she does not sound like that.
That's a great impression.
You sound like a Muppet.
Well, she sounds like a Muppet. She sounds like a Muppet giving birth. And if you'll hold me tight,
We'll be holding on forever.
I think that tells that scene pretty well, right? So this is just a beautiful moment of vulnerability and helping someone in a moment of vulnerability. I'm going to pass my answer on to my colleagues because they have more expertise in actually dealing with those who find themselves to be incredibly vulnerable this way. So you want to take the mic on this one, Carter?
Well, speaking for Robin, a queer icon such as myself, thank you. Where are my queers at? Thank you. It takes a ton of vulnerability to speak that truth, even in 2022. And I see this show being the 80s, when, you know, I was born in the 70s. Do the math. You know, it has not been a kind climate to queer folks, and it's better, but it's still not great. And so there's still a coming out that happens. And this scene with Robin and Steve, I mean, that happens in the bedroom stalls every day.
Right. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
A beautiful sort of chance element of this is that they genuinely like each other, and that's how the scene starts. And then he finds out, she tells him, he manages her vulnerability. He manages his response to her vulnerability by leaning into their friendship. That's not something people often do spontaneously, right? A little coaching in culture on how to deal with people's vulnerabilities, so you're ready for the moment, would be quite helpful. Anybody else want to talk about
Well,
this?
I think too it's about choice. Like you are a safe enough person for me to share this authenticity to.
Yeah.
Like so in a lot of the characters, we see a lot of really meaningful conversations that are chosen because they are their chosen thing.
Yes.
Like you are enough for me. You support me enough, you love me enough, you care for me enough, you will fight for me, and so I choose you consistently throughout the show.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone else on this thing?
Yeah, I think that looking at that vulnerability piece, there's such a stigma in our world now about it as a sign of weakness. And that's something that I usually have to talk about at length with the people I work with. That if I'm open and available, I'm weak, or whatever bad word we want to say with that. And through that vulnerability, I tell them, like, that's a superpower. Because nobody in this room would turn me down to say, like, hey, I need to talk. Everybody say, come on. But we find it internally difficult to do for ourselves. And being able to see these two characters kind of express that with no judgment really does help foster future abilities of vulnerability.
Very well said. For you, Andy. Of course, the first
If I could just add one thing to that. It's interesting, too, if you think about this scene juxtaposed with the vulnerable scene that Will and Mike had in the Pizza Surfer Boy van. That sounds so weird, but I think that look at the difference between the way Steve responded versus the way Mike responded to Will, right? It was Will. And one thing that sort of is indicative of to me is that vulnerability is about being. It's not about doing. Being in the moment and being just holding space. And I think as mental health professionals, that's what we do is hold space. And so I think just as a charge to everyone in your life as you're moving forward and being vulnerable with those that you love, when you feel like it's difficult for you to be, stop doing and just be present. And I think that that's what was so beautiful in that scene.
Be present. Go ahead, go ahead.
One more scene that I thought, to piggyback on yours, is when Mike's brother, still blanking on names, recognizes that conversation in the van, and then when they're at the pizza place and they're trying to prepare, because Mike never did come out and say overtly that he was in love with him. Not Will, Mike. Will never came out and said he was in love with Mike. He did it in talking about Elle. So when his brother in the kitchen is telling him, whatever you go through, whatever you do, whatever you are, I'm going to be here for you. I love you. I love that scene so much because it was another recognition of, I'm not going to come out and make you say the words. I'm just telling you that I'm going to love you no matter what and be there for you no matter what. And that was such a great scene. I teared up a little bit on that scene.
Anyone else comment on that scene? Alrighty then. So we've been dealing with some pretty heavy stuff. And so I left this last scene from my friend Justine. I'm looking at the wrong thing. There we go.
There it is.
There you go.
So I'm a little bit extra. I chose 4. in case you didn't pick up on my extraness, this is a good evidence of. So I love to talk about play and the healing therapeutic power of play. Because we tend to societally talk about play as though it's this frivolous, like whatever, nice to have, not need to have. Mr. Rogers said that play is the work of children, but I say that play is the meaning making of adults. And you all know that, right? Because you came here, and you came here to get filled up, get meaning, even if you didn't conceptualize it that way. So these are 4 scenes that kind of exemplify play in the show, and then how the choice to play became the chance to be heroes. So, we've got Elle and Hopper bonding, and they played a lot when they were first living together, and they were dancing, and they were being playful with food. There's so many ways to be playful, and it's such a great way to bond, and intergenerationally, right? We can speak through play, even if we can't exactly speak each other's languages. And then, Will's drawing, his mom was always encouraging him, asking him about his drawings, and so when he lost the power of language, he was able to draw all the vines that were under Hawkins so they could, find out where the big bad was. Had she not encouraged him, he wouldn't have had that skill, and she wouldn't have known how to interpret it. The kids obviously playing D&D, they made the choice to play that game, and then later they had the chance to literally save the world. And then one of my personal favorites, Dustin and Steve, they're going through the play of adolescence. And Steve gets the opportunity, he's usually a doofus with that hair. But he gets an opportunity to be sort of a mentor and lead Dustin through the play of dating and doing your hair and, the play of dress up. So I'm a recovering yoga teacher. And in that industry, there's a lot of talk about manifesting. And really, that's all about choice and chance, right? You're making the choice to do something so that later you have the chance to do something else. Like right now, I am making the choice to talk to you, and maybe someone out there is a casting agent, and then I will have the chance to finally have my big break in Hollywood. Did I manifest that?
There you go.
The yoga teachers would say yes. I would say, I'm playing real life D&D. Thank you.
I just love the fact that this show started with Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I was those 4 boys in that basement. For me, it was 1977, to be honest. But I loved it. It was in the basement, no internet, no club. It was just people playing and hanging out playing, having fun. I just love the way that they started playing. Any quick questions or comments on play?
I will just say, I love play as that catalyst for growth, too. So oftentimes teachers, after a crisis, will come to me and they'll be like, they're on the playground playing it, or they're, reenacting it. And I'm like, that's actually really healthy to, reenact trauma through play. So I think that as adults, we think that we have to be super serious about our healing, and we have to be super, therapeutic about it. But, play is therapy. So I love the point that you make about that in terms of, making meaning, because when we experience trauma, that's what we need to do. So I don't know about y'all, but when I get sad, I do role-playing games all the time because I need to play through what I'm feeling, and we lose that as we age. Kids are so good at it, and we lose it, and I kind of hope we can all get it back.
I gotta say, my father-in-law taught me how to play Pinochle. And when we would play, it'd be my father-in-law, my mother, or my wife. And I would be his partner. The only reason I would be his partner is because no one else would play with him. Because he'd overbid. Always overbid. Always get set, right? And he would always give his partner crap. But that was part of our play. That was how, like you talked about relationships and playing. That was just how we were together Friday nights, pizza and beer, playing Pinochle, giving each other crap. It was absolutely delightful. So look here. We actually have time for panel questions, for audience questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask any of our volunteers, because luck was not with you today and we didn't get anything, score. Oh, we got the one, you're right, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to ask you 3 if you have a question. Give you first dibs on a question.
Should have prepared this.
No, this is our chance. Please, all right, so we're going to go here first and then we'll go there.
The times that we're living through right now are very traumatic. We're living through a time of collective trauma. And I often use the imagery of the upside down and the Demogorgon to talk about grief and depression and our trauma. And I'll talk with clients about like, do you feel like you've entered the upside down? How close is the Demogorgon? And it becomes a really powerful metaphor to use. But absolutely, I think it very much mirrors the times that we're living in right now.
And I'll piggyback off that too in thinking about the otherness of a lot of these characters and not being like popular kids or even just being just other in general. Like I grew up in Indiana. I was one of 2 Black families in my neighborhood. And so I know what Lucas goes through. And so that's not so far removed from my experience. And as a 33-year-old woman, like it's still present to this day. There's still places that look like that. And we're not far removed from this idea that doing these things, Dungeons and Dragons, listening to this kind of music, being this kind of person is bad. Although there's more acceptance, I think generally in the world, we're still not to a place where people don't get shamed or people don't get bullied. Like the rise of online bullying now is so different. The magnitude, the reach, the outreach of it. And so I think that these kind of things play a huge role in how we see society today.
And I love you brought up bullying because that was actually what I was going to say was that a lot of what we see, I mean, that has not changed in any way. And I often talk about tigers in terms of trauma and like if a tiger enters the room, we have that fight or flight response, but oftentimes we have paper tigers that follow us around, and that's the upside down. This haunting thing that's coming for you, the mind flayer that's kind of telling you he's there, Vecna talking into your brain. No one else sees it. No one else hears it, but you do, and your body reacts, and you have this stress that you carry around. And I'm sure all of you can think of a time, thinking of that collective trauma in the last year or so, where you did feel like you entered the upside down, and you get stuck there. So I love that metaphor. I love you brought up the bullying too. I think that I got to write a chapter with Dr. Travis Langley's book. Hi, see you back there. And it plays out with my students the exact same way. Like I literally had a kid hit someone with a stick, just like 11 hit that girl with it. Like it plays out no different. And I think it's really sad that it's been 30 years and it's exactly the same. So.
Well, thank you for those fantastic answers. Let's go to the back, please. Make sure everybody can hear you. Any thoughts on that?
I didn't hear the question.
So she's asking if Polly, right, the sister Polly has actually, is the fact that she doesn't understand what's going on, whereas Erica's involved in the storyline, why is Polly oblivious?
Yep.
Whereas Erica is directly in the plot.
Go ahead.
Privilege.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put out the white privilege in that. And then I will say, and I have a colleague here, we talk about this a lot about when people we assume can't understand what's going around them. We assume that's a benefit. Children with intellectual disabilities is an example. It's actually not true. You can pick up on it. You can tell what's going on. But I think ultimately, there's, you can avoid something to cope for a little bit, but it will catch up with you. But I think ultimately the answer is the white privilege.
I would say Erica's involved because she has to be.
Yep.
And again, that's not good, bad, or otherwise. It's just the circumstances. And Polly and Mike Wheeler's whole family, they're just out here living their best lives while everything is going on. And I think it's because they can.
I also wonder if it's placating to, we have to have some people of color in the show. And so if we can get 2, we're doing good. I mean, we have 1 other security person. If we can get 2, we can at least have some visibility.
2 for the price of 1. It's a good purchase. Yeah.
Okay, I got to get the third question. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I've worked with people that have gone to jail, gone to prison. I worked on a team where a military veteran had just been released from prison because he accidentally shook his baby to death. And my entire team was women, and nobody wanted to work with him. And what I had to remind them is, 1, that's why we're here, and 2, there's something that caused him to react that way. So trying to find that piece of empathy that I had mentioned before was so important, because it allowed at least one of those providers to talk to this man and start to understand how his traumas took the chance and changed the entire path to his life, right? His trauma in Iraq of dealing with screaming kids caused him to react to shake his kid because he couldn't handle the screaming. And that's how I kind of look at it, is that there has to be some reason. We can understand the why, find the empathy there.
And if I could add to that, I would also say that that's a choice. It's a relative choice. So Billy's irredeemability, for example, is going to be different for everyone. I don't think that's like an objective thing that like the redeemable line is here. Like we all sort of have to decide that for ourselves. And I think that what happens, and particularly Billy is a good example, because to me, like racism means something different to me because I'm a black person. You know what I'm saying? So the line for him, for me, would be very different, or could be very different than somebody else. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that even in the space of mental health, there are certain clients that I'm not going to work with because that is who I am and those are my values, and that is a choice that I get to make. You know what I'm saying? But I think that for all people, it's going to be different. And I do think that the idea of irredeemability can get wild.
It's got to be brief.
Yeah, no, it's going to be brief. So what I was going to say is the difference between justifiable and redeemable. And redeemable means that that person has to make the effort that's equitable and higher than the harm that they caused. My definition of Billy being irredeemable is that doesn't undo the harm in any way. It doesn't get back to the universe other than he saves 11 or whatever. So I would just put that out there that, like you said, but it's also a difference between I redeemed myself through effort and reparation and restorative justice versus I'm justifiable.
Okay, let's do some. Okay, so we're going to start down with Leandra. Tell people where they can find you on social media. Or if you're doing anything else here as well.
I am not, y'all. I'm tired. I'm on Twitter at Paris Leandra, at Parris Leandra.
Dr. Vanessa Hintz on all forms of social media, drvanessahintz.com. I'll be outside if y'all have any more questions.
You can go to SistahSpeakProductions.com and you'll find us anywhere that podcasts are available. We have a ton.
You can find me on YouTube at Dark Luke's Productions, where we will be posting a recording of this panel.
You can find me on all social medias at Mind Body Fandom, because I take a holistic approach to healing, mind, body, and fandom. And you can find my book, Starship Therapise, using therapeutic fan fiction to rewrite your life wherever books are sold.
You can find me on Instagram at @BeTherapeutic like Bumble, and taking off my skates very shortly.
And I write for a series of books with Dr. Langley, the Psychic books. We take a lot of fandoms and explain mental health like this one. And the Stranger Things book will come out in February.
Can I get a round of applause for this amazing panel?